In 2018, when California was battling its largest wildfires and the Bay Area was shrouded in smoke, I decided to make my escape. I boarded a flight for Vancouver, Canada, and all along the way there, this smoky landscape was what I saw outside of my airplane window. At that time, I was glad that I was able to escape from that. But as soon as I landed in Vancouver, I was encountered by this. It turned out that a nature reserve a few miles from where I was staying also caught fire, and for the whole week, I had to wear the only N95 mask that I had brought with me from California. And that's when I realized that there was no escape from this wildfire and that I had to face it head on. I met Eric in my research in wildfires. So he's a vegetation manager who helps forested landowners along the West Coast trim down excess vegetation on their lands to prevent wildfires. Landowners pay people like Eric hundreds of millions of dollars for this. He sells a larger diameter wood as timber or pulp, but once he's done with that, his job is only half complete, because he's faced now with an almost existential question. What do you do with the huge piles of small diameter slashed biomass that gets left behind? If it's left in place, then that's really just another flammable fuel that can feed the wildfires. The easiest method, of course, is for him to pile the slash residues up and set it on fire in the winter, when the weather is not so conducive to wildfires. This is heavily regulated to specific burn days during the year, and the public normally doesn't take all that smoke and fire very well. And planning this operation and hiring a full firefighting crew is also a very expensive process. What about instead simply trucking the slash away to a biomass power plant like this one? Well, one of Eric's biggest headaches is actually finding truckers willing to haul away the biomass, as this is a job nobody wants to do. If he manages to find a power plant 50 miles away that's willing to take the biomass as chipped fuel, more often than not, what a power plant pays him will not even cover the cost of transportation, so that he has to eat that cost himself. And in fact, for most vegetation management operations, this issue of logistics and access is the single most expensive and bothersome part of the operation. Thus, I came to my first epiphany. Biomass such as slash residues are very loose, wet, and bulky, which makes them very difficult and expensive to collect and haul from distributed, hard-to-access areas. Eric would offer his residues for free, but even then, no one would want to cover the transportation cost. So his residues are effectively stranded in remote places, unable to be utilized in biofuel or bioproduct conversion processes, even though it's valuable. That's the crux of Eric's problem. Once I realized this, I started seeing similar problems play out in other biomass sectors globally, such as agriculture. For example, when I traveled to Kenya, I learned the story of Mr. Mutike and his family. He's a rural smallholder farmer owning a 1-acre rice plot. After harvest, he will have rice stubble scattered in his field. He really wanted to sell this to an organic composting facility to earn some extra income, but he lived too far away from it, and he would pay too much to transport it. Given that he was in a hurry to clear his land for the next planting, his only recourse was to burn the residues in his field. This created eye-watering smoke that lingered for days in his household. And what's more, the smoke also traveled to nearby cities, contributing to severe urban smog. In fact, this is causing such a big pollution problem that the government started cracking down by fining farmers like him for burning. But in reality, he didn't really have much choice. To really address this issue of biomass transportability, I started working on a new generation of small-scale, low-cost, portable biomass conversion reactors that can be latched onto the back of tractors and pickup trucks to deploy to hard-to-access rural areas, including farms and logging landings, where it could locally process and densify the slash residues with minimum labor and no external energy requirement into high-value, more useful bioproducts within just 30 minutes. So what kinds of bioproducts can we make? Well, it turns out that our process is pretty robust, and we can make various things including biofuels, fertilizer-based, and even precursors to specialty chemicals that can satisfy end users' requirements all down at a local level before any transportation begins. What does this mean for farmers in rural regions? Mr. Mutike was able to access an affordable, locally produced, high-quality fertilizer made mostly from his own crop residues. And after using the product for 2 seasons, this is what he has to say.
Baada ya kuvuna tena zile kilo zinaongezeka pale, kilos ni nyingi kuliko wakati ule tulikuwa tunapanda hapo beleni. Hiyo ndio tofauti ile nimeona.
Therefore, turning trash into cash became my core mission. But beyond just cash, there are other social impacts that I also envision. Take the example of Joyce on the left here. As an underemployed youth who grew up in a rural village, she normally would migrate to a Nairobi slum to find livelihood and remit the meager income back home. But our village-based biomass conversion enabled her to find a full-time job in her ancestral village. And after 2 years in the operation team, she's been promoted as the operation manager. And now she's contemplating heading to Nairobi not to eke out a living, but to get her MBA. And the more money that people like Joyce make, the more environmental impact they're also delivering. By recycling the local crop residues, they are changing the villagers' perception that their waste is actually a valuable commodity that can be traded. And when farmers use fertilizer produced in this fashion, they're also inadvertently sequestering carbon into their own soil and improving the soil health, which has long been degraded. And what's tremendously exciting to me is that this technology could also be applied in my home in the American West Coast. By helping forested landowners derive more value and utilization from slash residues, we also help reduce the risk of catastrophic wildfires, improve local air quality, and reduce the frequency of preventive rolling blackouts. So please join us and help us reimagine a future where trash is cash. Thank you.